All right. Hello, my name is Val Schwartz, and I'm the head of admissions at NC State's Institute for Advanced Analytics. And today I'm excited to speak with one of our fantastic Master of Science in Analytics alumni. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Val. So I'm Ryan Schork. I graduated from the IAA in 2014. I'm currently working at DoorDash as the head of forecasting, leading a team of machine learning engineers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. We're really excited to have you with us today. And I'm going to have you kind of go back in time for a minute, if you would, and just sort of think about your time when you were here at the Institute and your experience as a practicum team lead as well. And what were some of the skills that you either learned or got to hone while you were here that maybe you continue to leverage today?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'm forever thankful for my time at the IAA is the emphasis not just on any one specific technical skill, but trying to contextualize the type of analysis you would do and operate in a corporate setting. And that's something I feel like might be the trickiest leap to make as you move through, data science, machine learning, or analytics. Because a lot of the coursework you might do otherwise, or a lot of the examples you find online are kind of self-contained exercises. But the step that's missing is how do I then sell my stakeholders on the quality of my analysis? How do I make sure that it's having the right ROI so I can ensure the project, even if it produces a good result, is worth the time we're putting into it, especially when there's scarce resource constraints. And so that skill set is something that, through being a practicum lead and having real stakeholders, was something that you're faced with every day in being a practicum lead. And that's where also some of the other coursework outside of the technical skills that the IA provides in terms of communication, in terms of presentation, the various boot camps and, individual kind of seminars that happen, really make you think about that every day and really, I think help you develop in a good path to be well prepared when you enter a business environment. Because one of the first things, you're faced with is where in terms of the job progression are you going to slot. And one of the first distinctions that gets made, whether you're going to become a manager or, work your way up the IC track, is this concept of a tech lead, where you kind of own one specific set of analysis and you can communicate with stakeholders and prepare the communication. And so that's the first jump you're going to have to make from, a junior analyst or an entry-level data scientist to more senior level positions, even before, no matter if you want to be a principal engineer or more of a director of data science.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's excellent. And I guess I have sort of a two-part question next. So part one is, how did you decide when you were coming out of the Institute and then kind of making your way through your own career trajectory, kind of which direction you wanted to take and which sort of area you wanted to specialize in? And part B of that is, what do you actually do? Like, I know you work for DoorDash, you do, head of forecasting stuff, machine learning stuff, but like, what do you actually do? What does that mean day to day?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the first part and like, how did I decide what I wanted to do next? So there's a wide range of opportunities. I was at in kind of a unique time in my life where I was a bit younger, I hadn't started a family yet or had a house. So I figured, the entering into the world of data science where there's opportunities everywhere, I'd take some time to explore and really kind of find what's out there. And so actually my first step, it provided me an opportunity to move to Singapore and work as a data scientist out there for a startup that was just launching. And I figured that would be a good opportunity to broaden my horizons and get exposed to that space. And I stuck with working for early stage startups just out of kind of personal interest and having that itch to scratch. And there's pros and cons. Obviously, it can be exciting. There's a lot of opportunity, but after working for various smaller startups, there's also politics and resource constraints that can happen. So last startup ended up folding and wanted to move to a bigger company that still had exciting challenges. Something, I always kind of had tunnel vision thinking that, it's the small startup and working your way up is the only way to do, exciting things in the field of data science. And then, I've actually found during my time at DoorDash, when you're not having to rapidly prototype and bootstrap, you actually have some resources combined with exciting problems to solve, can actually scratch that itch more than coming in right from the bottom. And then two, obviously there's a lot of large institutions that are trying to make a shift right now. So even if there are larger institutions who you might feel are more settled in the data science space, something like generative AI, all of them are trying to figure out how to do that. So you can almost have this startup within a startup mentality as well if you're, helping make a transition for a larger company. So I'm enjoying right now that sweet spot in a relatively new company that, now has resources, but it's still a growth company. We're not profitable yet, and we're still on that journey of proving ourselves out. So that was kind of a happy medium for me. And some of my responsibilities there are, kind of leading new initiatives that we want to launch, and then trying to make sure that they're delivering the right ROI for the company. So, before I joined, we didn't have a dedicated forecasting solution. So my job was actually to build that internal tool. So again, it goes back to being like a startup within a startup, and that takes you on a journey from pitching the idea, describing how you would build your team, proving some initial solutions, testing out, product fit internally with different teams, and then showing that you can scale that, and it's not just a solution that's going to have to be staffed individually for each model you build. And now we're on the journey of building that solution internally. So a lot of the same, excitement from both ends, just kind of a nice middle ground in my opinion. So it started with a lot of IC work. Now a lot of my time managing a team of 5 is making sure I can remove blockers for them to be successful. And that's been really exciting because it's a chance to give back. And it's also a great chance to work and learn with a lot of smart people and kind of help bring them along. And I think, I decided the management track just due to personal interests and, enjoying, the mentoring pieces and, operating within the corporate ladder was an exciting challenge for me. But it's also, I get a little jealous sometimes when I'm working with the senior ICs on my team, because the stuff they build is so incredibly brilliant, and it's fun to be able to champion that for them. But also, you miss getting your hands dirty, so you like to find the time to do your own IC work when you can. But also lucky DoorDash doesn't draw a distinction in terms of prestige, in terms of IC track or management track. So they're both very relevant.
That's really good to hear. And so earlier in that response, you mentioned, the fact that every company, regardless of its size or orientation, is trying to figure out right now what to do with generative AI. And so obviously that's sort of at the forefront for everybody right now. But if you're kind of looking a little bit bigger picture and thinking back to, the kinds of tools and techniques you focused on when you were a student here almost a decade ago, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in just the field of data science since you've been out and since you've been working in these various realms?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest change I've noticed is just the rapid availability of computing power with cloud computing. And naturally with that, you have the ability for computers to do a lot of optimization and solving and mapping of problems, where before the jobs would just never finish in time because they couldn't scan those many solutions. So you have the advantage of being able to crunch a lot more numbers, build a lot more complex models, select between a lot more models. But the trade-off, the classic trade-off becomes much more pronounced, where before you might have had to build a carefully tuned model through investigation of the data because you needed things to be right in advance. Otherwise, you couldn't scan all the different possibilities in order to get to the right solution. So it's opened up a lot of doors, but I think, as the big data problems become, I would say, easier to solve just by sheer the brilliance of some of these algorithms and computing systems, I think the smaller data problems will actually kind of slip back through the cracks and get a lot more attention. So I would say, even though this change is coming and computers are a lot more powerful, retaining that ability to really unpack a model and build it step by step is going to become something that where before it was necessary, and it still is obviously necessary, but now it's going to be, if people ignore that skill set, it's an opportunity for people who retain it. Because, for example, in the forecasting world, some of the forecasts that we do, we might have 200 data points in a daily series. Like, that is not big data, and you can try and throw some of the big data solutions at it, but there's just not enough data there to fit these complex patterns. So if you can't break it down and analyze it from seasonality, trend, outliers, these kind of basic fundamentals, you're not going to be very successful. And I think some of those explanatory, step-by-step methods might actually come back to the forefront as we make this shift to solve, things where you might not be as interested in the explanation, like training an algorithm to recognize a picture of a cat. Well, it's a picture of a cat. You just need the right mapping of the pixels to create it, but you might not care that it's an interaction between this pixel and that pixel. So there's problems like that. But the other ones, like, forecasting or things that intersect with the business where you don't have big, like, large data sets, I think will be switched back to have increasing emphasis as we move forward. So that's one change I've seen. It's kind of this constant computing power takes a leap up. So everyone's like, prediction, let's use these methods. Then, you realize, oh, well, we've got to go back and unpack some of it. So the explanatory side comes back to the forefront. And like a lot of causal methods are now getting a lot more attention on that front. And then computing power goes back up and it shifts back. So it's kind of this cycle, in my opinion. So that's where it's important that, the IA teaches both sides. And some people might just want to jump to the cutting edge computer science pieces at the expense of the other side to be at the forefront. But then it'll shift back. And then, if you don't have the well-rounded skill set, you'll kind of miss some things on the other end.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because we can say that, but sometimes I think hearing it from someone who's actually living this and doing it every day is really valuable for people to hear. So that was excellent. And you kind of touched on some of it right there, but what advice would you offer to aspiring data science professionals, prospective MSA students, current students here, other folks in this realm? What would you tell them?
Yeah, so I would say, don't think you have to have like a path directly figured out. You should have some idea of what you want to explore first, but like data science can be applied to many different fields, and it's easier probably than other skill sets in order to make a shift between industry. So you can explore a variety of things and really take your time to figure out exactly what you want to focus on. Like when I graduated, I moved to Singapore. I was working for Singtel, or a subsidiary of Singtel, a startup they were trying to create, working on ways to monetize mobile telephone data. Then I moved into digital lending in the mobile space, and then I went into like more traditional banking. And then I now am doing forecasting for DoorDash in the food delivery space. So you can make those types of moves. The key thing I would say is just figuring out how to oversee successful projects, whether that's a model you're building or something else, and getting things across the finish line to where they're actually implemented for the business. And that means trying to sometimes dial it back if you're building something that's over engineered, like trying to find the way to right size a data science solution, I think is kind of that key step. And you won't have to be and because you can be intimidated by so there's individuals in the space who have PhD in engineering and they're experts in this one space, but if there's no way to practically implement that solution, then you can get a leg up even without having as many papers or having that depth of knowledge. It's really kind of a sweet spot, and it goes back to some of the skills we learned. How do we calculate ROI? What does, my director, my stakeholders, what do they actually want? How can I break that down into product specs to make sure what I'm building is what they want, not too little and not something more like that? I feel like is really key first skill to learn. And then once you're able to do that, you have the skill set that can help guide your solution, and it becomes a lot easier to build a plan for what you're going to build and feel more secure around it, and hopefully know that you're not spending too much time or too little time, and you have a clear roadmap of what you're going to deliver.
Excellent. All right, just for fun then. So you said you're from Cleveland, and you obviously did your undergrad and your grad work here in North Carolina. You were in Singapore for a while. How did you land in the Bay Area, and what do you like about living and working there on the West Coast?
Yeah, for sure. So it was a long journey ending up here. I kind of knew that I wanted to explore and see a little more. I grew up in Cleveland, hadn't traveled that much, went to Elon for undergrad, worked in Washington, D.C. for a while, just kind of focused on figuring out the career side. And then, once I decided it was data science, wanted to go back to the IAA. Actually, this is a funny story too, because one of the reasons I found out about the IAA was I got a targeted ad on the web. So whoever's running the algorithms and the data science behind which students we should attract hit me with the perfect target at the right time. And then I joined, and I saw those doors open up, and I didn't want to kind of limit myself because I knew I could apply data science to a lot of things. So I used it as a mechanism to explore some personal ambition as well. Like I wanted to live abroad. It was a good way to qualify for work visas and be able to move abroad to pursue that passion. I used it then. I wanted to be closer to family, so I moved to San Diego for a bit and worked for a company there. And then I decided, obviously people know about Silicon Valley and the startup scene there, and I have always loved San Francisco. So, after checking off some of those personal things, I wanted to go involve myself in that space, and moved up here, and I feel like after some challenging times with some startups that folded and other situations up here, found myself in a good spot to grow. I think another thing was finding the right person to act as a mentor. So I'll look up to the head of data science here at DoorDash. He really resonated with me, and that was a big reason for me to stay. And now I've been at DoorDash almost 4 years. So that's been a big driver as well of me staying at DoorDash and in the Bay. In addition to it's a pretty beautiful part of the country as well. So it's an easy place to get used to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that mentorship piece I think is huge. Absolutely. And it's nice to hear you cite that as a specific reason why you would choose to stay there. So that's great. Thank you so much. Well, Ryan, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate all of your thoughts and responses to these questions, and I'm sure that our viewers will as well. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and always good to reconnect with the IAA. It's made so many positive connections there, and love giving back in any way I can.